Alright, so let's get started with texturing in Substance Painter. So just a heads up, the following ways which we are gonna discuss are the ones commonly used to texture in Substance, with some personal things thrown in here and there. Other people you encounter might have different ways to do the same thing, which may or may not be faster or better than the way I am showing. My advice, use these techniques as a base and experiment more and more with Substance to find out your own ways. So that being said, we have our scene set up. We have all of the mesh maps baked in. So now we can finally start texturing and use what Substance has to offer. So for this class, let's create a simple painted metal material. So I'm going to go to my layers and let's start with creating a base metal material. So I'm going to start with a fill layer. I'm going to go down to my channels and let's play with these values to get something which we want. So let's make it metal. Let's make it more shiny. Let's change the color to something like a bit bright white. Let's make it more glossy or less rough. But this right now is a bit too perfect. So we're going to add one more fill layer. I'm going to go and add a black mask. On my fill layer, I'm going to go in and disable everything but keep my roughness on. On my fill layer, I'm going to right click and add a fill. So fill helps us use a texture or a procedural. So we are going to go over to our shelf, scroll up, go to our procedurals. So procedurals are basically tileables inside Substance that does have some controls which we can use to change them that Substance has to offer. So let's pick in something grungy. So let's type in grunge and let's pick grunge league small, which is going to be this guy. And let's drag and drop it here to a grayscale, which says grayscale uniform color. We can scroll up. So from here, you can scale it, which basically tiles it more. You can rotate your tileables and you can offset it. So let's come in, Alt click on our mask so we can see what our grunge map is doing. Let's click on our grunge map again and let's style it a bit less or a bit more. If I rotate up, you're going to see we have some pretty pronounced seam right here. That's going to be an obvious thing since we have a seam on our UVs right here. It's pretty easy to fix through Substance. We can go to projection and instead of UV projection, let's just pick in triplanar projection. So that gets rid of our seam. So what triplanar projection is doing, it's just taking our texture and forming a cube, and from the three sides, from the top, from the front, and from the side, it's projecting that texture in through our 3D model. It's kind of like Dynamesh from ZBrush, if that explains it better. Triplanar sometimes helps, sometimes it does not. You might want to see which works best for you and use that. Let's scale it up again. Let's hit M to see what our texture is doing. And if I go back to my fill layer, if I scroll down and change my roughness, I can have more breakup in my shiny material. We can come back to our grunge. We can scroll down and play with our balance to have more whites or more black. So let's get something like this. So what we just created is a simple mask that is describing where our fill layer is going to affect and where it won't. Right now our fill layer is only affecting roughness. We can also add color to those areas, but let's just keep it at roughness for now. So once we are happy with our material, I'm going to go in and tweak this a little bit more before we jump into the next step. So I went in and tweaked my main layer a bit more and our new fill layer as well. So let's just name these guys to have a better sense of organization. So base metal, So once we are happy with our metal, let's create in the paint layer. So let's just select these two guys and hit Ctrl G to group them. And let's name it base metal. By clicking here, you can close in your group folder and expand it. Our group folder can also have a black mask and a white mask. We are not going to use it right now, but soon in future. So let's create in our painted materials. So let's close this. Let's create one more fill layer. Name it paint base. Let's make it something like red or blue. If I scroll down, let's make it non-metal and let's increase the roughness. So right now we have a flat blue color controlling our whole material. Let's say we want to use a texture to describe that base color. We can do that. Let's go to our procedurals again. And if I disable the filter, you see we have these default textures from Substance. All you have to do to assign a texture is drag this and on base color, drop it. So now it's using that textures everywhere. The same thing which we can do is scale it up or scale it down. Since these materials are a bit procedurals, we have control over the color which it has. So let's change it. So by playing with these settings, I made a texture like this. You can change something of your own. Let's say if we have a specific texture from outside software or something which we made, and we want to use that instead of the things that Substance provides us. To do that, we're just going to import those textures in. The easiest way to import things in Substance is just drag and drop it, or you can click on this guy, or you can go to File and click on Import Resources. All of those three things are going to do the same thing. So let's keep it with this guy for now. If I click here, it's going to show me an import resources box. If we drag and drop it here, it's already going to have those options which we are importing. So let's click on add resources. Let's bring in a texture I have on my desktop, and it gives us these settings. To import anything in Substance, first we have to describe what that thing is and where do we want to import it. So under undefined, if I click here, I have to define this as a texture instead of alpha, color alert, and an environment. So let's pick on texture. And this is where we describe where Substance is going to save it. So current session is just going to keep it for current session. As soon as you close it, it's going to get deleted. Project untitled will save this with your project file. And shelf is going to save it permanently on our shelf with every single project. So let's keep it for current session and let's import it. So we have our texture imported under texture section. So to replace this, all I have to do is go up and under my base color, drag and drop this guy. So we have this new texture. Since it's not a procedural, we lose control over those settings, but we have our own texture tiling right now. With same texture tiling, we are going to face the same issue of seams right here. We can always fix that just by making it triplanar. But in some cases, it's going to give us weird results. So that is something case specific. You might or might not want to use triplanar projection. So I'm going to go in and replace this texture since this is not my own. So let's go into project and let's keep things which are from Substance. So under procedurals, let's drag and drop our camo again. I'm going to just go in and change those settings to get something new. So this is what I have made, and I'm using a triplanar projection to fix those seam issues. It's giving me some artifacts, but they're not that pronounced, so I'm just going to keep it right now. If I go back to my fill layer, I'm going to change in my roughness to get a little bit more shiny material. One more thing that we are facing right now is that our material is too perfect. So let's just go in and break this guy too. So let's create one more fill layer and disable everything, just not our height. Let's add a black mask, add a fill, and name it. So now under fill, we are going to add in one more procedure. Let's go to procedure, type in paint. I'm going to pick in grunge plaster paint, drag and drop this guy in, and we have a new mask that's controlling this. So let's go up, not up. Let's go to our fill layer and change the scale. We're going to have the same UVs around here. We can always change it to triplanar projection to fix that issue. I'm going to tile it more. I'm going to go down and play with my balance and contrast to get something like this. You see we have a brush pattern, which is something we did not had in our last one. So some of the procedural have some specific things related to it. Just go and play with those sliders to see what they do. Let's go back to our material. And now if I go over to my fill and I change my height, I'm going to see those breakups right here. I'm just going to go in and quickly change some of the parameters to get something like this. Just a subtle effect of paint. One more thing you might notice with some chipping paints or old paints that they get a bit of air bubble randomly across its surface where air gets trapped. So let's try to add something like that. Let's create one more fill layer. Let's name it paint bubbles. Add a fill. Let's go into our procedures again. Let's pick in something that's just noisy. So let's try with black and white spots 1. Let's drag and drop this guy. Alt click on our mask. Let's go down and pick our fill layer again. Let's go down and change our balance and contrast with our tileables. So since black and white 1 was not giving me the effect I wanted, I'm going to go in and pick something else which we have on our shelf library. So I'm going to go pick in something that might have spots on them. So let's try in grunge stain spots. Let's drag this guy in and we have new settings. If I alt click on this and if I click on my fill layer, let's style it more. Let's try to reduce the amount of these spots which we have. Let's go up, tile it less. So maybe something like this. Let's go back to our fill layer and let's enable height and disable everything else. So if I increase my height, we're going to have those bubbles popping up. But they're a bit too sharp for my taste and we might want to blur it down. We can do that if I go back to my fill layer. I click on this, right click here and add a filter. If I click on my filter and type in blur, we have a blur filter. So it's blurring it a lot right now. So let's just scale it down till we have something like this. And now we have those bubbles and the control in their heights. And we can make them pop or go in. Let's keep them out a bit. So this is our paint layer. So now we want the chipping to happen around the edges where he might have been moving a lot or getting damages in. So we're going to use a generator to do that.